Hello, and welcome to episode 268 of the Casual Try Hard podcast. I'm Brian,
And I'm James.
and this week we have a teeny tiny, eeny weeny band list update.
Sure.
And then this is probably going to take like multiple weeks, we'll see. Or just kind of like, I don't know if we're going to work through this whole list, but like, I think it's your fault.
Probably.
You were talking about how interesting some of the like build around uncommons have been in recent sets.
Yeah.
So I kind of went through and put down a list of like all the like impactful uncommons we have had in the last like few years.
Yeah, I added a few more to the list.
Thank you.
I think we can do, I didn't add a ton more because the list was already pretty long. But I think we can kind of do a little combination of both here. I think this is going to, for what I wanted to get out of this, I think it's going to be more than one episode, maybe even more than two episodes. But also, I don't think we necessarily have to talk about every card on this list. I mean, if we have something to say, we can say it, but I don't think we have to dive deep into all of these. But yeah, I just thought that when I think this started the last time we did our set review episode was that when I was going through the spoilers, I found myself looking forward to seeing the signpost on commons and thought to myself, that's kind of weird. So
that's how you address yourself? Self?
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So while we're doing this, and this again might be a thing that comes up every couple weeks or whatever, but there's plenty of like room for you guys to chime in and be like, hey, we'd like you to talk about this. I don't know. We're probably like 3 days from another spoiler season starting.
I think we are like 3 days from another spoiler season. So,
but if you have any show ideas, anything you want to say to us, reach out to us on social media, Facebook, Discord, the artist formerly known as Twitter, email. All those links are in the description. So come in, say hey, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah. Because we are coming up on another spoiler season, means we're also going to have set reviews and limited first looks and all that stuff that we normally do. This little mini series here might take a little bit to get out. But we want to keep it focused on like these interesting uncommons. So like Brian said, if there's any that you guys think are interesting you want added to the list, let us know. If there's anything you wish us to discuss about uncommons, you can let us know that as well. All the links are down below. If you're looking to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do it. The first is with a TCG player affiliate link, CasualTryHard.com/TCG. Surf on over to TCG player there and make your purchases. If you want any of these uncommons, if you're looking for anything for a new deck or whatever, surf over there, make your purchases, and you'll support the show at the same time. We would appreciate it. If you want to support us more directly, patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG is where you can do that. If you sign up for Patreon, you'll get access to our show notes. You'll get access to our pre-show, which is about another hour's worth out of content out of us this week. We went a little long this week, so our patrons will have a little bonus there. About all manner of stuff, not necessarily Magic. Just two buddies catching up, making sure our equipment works. You never know what we're going to talk about. It's usually pretty entertaining. If you like any
or
of that.
Informative.
Yes, informative also. We both have vastly different careers with different expertise and skill sets, so you never know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So if any of that sounds good, or if you just want to support the show, you can do that as well. Patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG and chip a couple bucks in. Would be great.
All right. So first up, we have the ban and restrict announcement.
Yep.
Which, like, I don't know if I was like, not like as tapped into like the Magic discourse as I used to be, but like the fact that apparently at the end of just like weekly MTG last week, Ben was it's Ben, right? Was just like, hey, we'll be back next week to talk about the BNR.
Blake.
Yep. Ben, whatever. It came with a B.
Yeah.
There were vowels and consonants after that B.
Were there basketball shorts though?
I don't know if they're basketball shorts. But he was like, "Hey, we're gonna check in on that with you after the BNR." It was like a lot of people were like, "Oh, apparently there's a BNR happening next week."
Yeah.
Like, it was just like, "Oh." So, they did. Before we talk about the actual cards, one thing I will say is it does feel like they did a little bit more in the way of like explaining why they made or did not make changes than they have done in the past, which will hopefully like help some people kind of understand where
where they're coming from.
Because there's been a lot of like they just said no changes and then didn't say anything.
Right.
So at least this is like a little bit perhaps better.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan, for really putting in the work there.
Yeah.
So, standard, there are no changes.
Correct.
Which I think
fine.
is fine. I mean, if you told me that they were going to ban Shieldred, like, I'd probably be okay with that. But I don't know, like, how much that improves the format.
Yeah.
Right? It just kind of changes what ridiculous black 4-drop you play.
So when does Shieldred rotate? Because Shieldred
effectively never. 20 I think fall 2025, maybe 2026.
Yeah.
When did Dominaria came out this last fall, right? Or the fall before? No, fall before, because we were.
Okay, so
it
it's
came
going to
out
rotate
in 2023. No, that's the old rotation schedule. 2025. Because it came out in 2023, right?
So we still got 2 years of Shieldred left.
Yes. No, a year.
Well,
I guess a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think what do you think the chances of Shieldred making it a year and a half are?
So like tinfoil hat, right? You can't print a 4-drop that is in black that is better than Shieldred.
Right.
Right, like you can and then just wreck 4 other formats. You just can't.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that if they like have a bunch of cards they want to be seeing play, right? Like it's all well and good, but like if to not have a longer rotation, but like if they're like, man, why aren't we moving packs? This card should be like a standard all-star, and it's like, yeah, no, it loses to Shieldred on like every metric. Like, oh yeah, that probably explains why we can't move packs.
Right.
Like you could see them doing that. Or just like, I think there's going to be like a black X deck for as long as Shieldred is legal. And like, are they okay with like black green mid range? And like Esper will stop being a thing once Rafine goes away.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's kind of the pool to be Esper. But like some like black white nonsense, like control-ish mid range deck with like Shieldred.
Yeah.
And like now that every color gets card draw, like that's not a problem. So like I could see, I don't know, I'd probably say like a 75% chance it makes it through. But I could definitely see like, you know, in a year and a half being like, we're going to ban this just to give the format 6 months to breathe and be different.
Yeah.
Because like that's like, I think that's the risk of the longer rotation schedule, right? Is just like people staring at the same decks over and over and over again. So.
No, I mean, evidently, according to their data, that's what people want. I kind of thought that was the draw to standard, was that you didn't do that, but
yeah, but it is now returned to being the most played 60-card tabletop format. In addition to remaining the most played digital format. I don't know, like how many how many places are even offering 60 card tabletop events at the LGS level? Like none around here that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't speak for what the rest of the country does or the rest of the world, and I can hardly speak for our local area anymore. It's been so long since I set foot in a game store, but
I can give anecdotal evidence about the San Antonio area.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, uh,
Well, that was what I forgot to ask you about in the pre-show.
former guest
Mhm.
and uh, former member of our limited podcast network,
Mhm.
Anthony, has cheated on us and is now playing a Weeb Magic.
Yeah.
He's playing Card Fight or whatever. But he was like, we were talking about it. He was just like, yeah, like everyone down here just plays Commander. No one plays like. He's like, and then they were talking about competitive Commander, and I just like tried not to laugh at them. And I was like, no, it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing where four people sit down and they're like, my goal is to win,
Mhm.
as opposed to my goal is to do the thing and celebrate rats or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's like, no one plays 60 card Magic there at all.
Yeah.
He's not. I was like, yeah. I was like, I've not seen any like local advertising at stores about like 60 card Magic events other than maybe like, hey, it's the store championship,
Mhm.
and they're making us play standard.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Pioneer was again no changes.
Which you thought was kind of odd, right?
Yeah, like, um, there I saw. So Jim Davis had an entire article on cool stuff
Mhm.
that was devoted to why you should ban Treasure Cruise,
Yeah.
and like LSV's article in response to the bans was kind of like, I don't understand why they didn't ban Treasure Cruise. He brought up that like Phoenix was 18% of the PT and still won 57.7% of its matches.
Which is kind of wild.
Yeah, for like a deck to have effectively a 60% win rate
Mhm.
and have whatever that was, 80 players
Yeah, I mean,
or
what makes
something.
that number even crazier though is that you can only have a 50% win rate in the mirror.
Yeah, or they just don't count the mirror.
Do they
Is
not
sometimes
count the
what they
mirror?
do. Sometimes they do. Some like a lot of times they'll take out the non-mirror. He didn't specify it was non-mirror
Yeah.
match win rate.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I know
like,
sometimes they break it out. I didn't know what that
yeah, I don't know if he did, but yeah,
number
like if you
was.
have a 50% win rate against yourself
Yeah.
and then you still pull
57%.
percent on, but even if you take out the non-mirror match win rate, like
Yeah.
if I told you, hey, a deck it only put like one or maybe it was one into the top eight, maybe two.
Yeah.
Um, but it won 57% of its matches, you'd be like, ooh, that might be a problem.
Mhm.
And maybe they are looking at it to be a problem, but they were saying like, oh hey, uh Azorius Control got no more lives to Zeus and Deduce and
Jesus.
uh,
Meticulous
Meticulous
archive.
Archive. And it's like, yeah, but the deck won like 40% of its matches.
Yeah.
So like, can't call it. It was a most played deck, but it was also the most dumpster deck.
Mhm.
Um, and then like, Amalia combo, yay! And then it's like Picklock Prankster, and then oh hey, Field got better, which no thank you.
Right.
Um, do I have all the cards to play Lotus Field? I do. Does it look miserable every time I watch it? It does.
Does.
And then like, hey, Rakdos Vampires won the whole event. So yay, diversity. And it's like, well, one of those decks is unplayable in blue white.
Right.
Amalia is a deck that like is just the kind of deck they ban.
Yeah, I mean, they were talking before you said something in the pre-show. I had heard also, but they were talking about tagging something out of Amalia just because the games were going so long.
Going long, and then also you get to the like, I don't know if you didn't watch the top eight, but in
No.
the semifinals, um, the red white heroic player, um, multiple times casts like Lauren's Escape,
Yeah.
on the wild growth walker,
Mm.
so that it couldn't die, so you couldn't get out of the
Just
loop.
drew the game. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, like, Phoenix, like, keeping Treasure Cruise around was kind of like what I thought would go, because like the deck is super consistent
Yeah.
and like plays the same game kind of over and over and over again. And it has like kind of the hallmark of a deck that they don't like, which is game one, you do graveyard shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
But then game two, you board in stuff that gets around the use of your graveyard.
Right.
So there's not like kind of it's a graveyard deck that then doesn't need its graveyard in later games.
Yep.
Which is something they usually aren't a huge fan of.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, every format Treasure Cruise has been legal in, the format has devolved into the best deck, or let's say one of the top two decks being a blue-red deck that has, like, cheap removal and food for Treasure Cruise.
Yeah.
And just kind of plays, like, the same game every single match.
Yep.
And so, like, I think that there is a chance that it could go away in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If it can kind of continues it, like, I win 58% of my matches and I'm 20% of the field.
Yeah. I would imagine that's a pretty good indicator something's going to leave.
Yeah. But so, like, this is another one of like, hey, if you are interested in playing this deck in paper, but don't have a particular place you're planning on playing it,
maybe hold off.
Maybe wait. Yeah, don't just like, I'm going to have these cards just in case.
Yeah. I mean, the counterpoint that I made during the pre-show was that, like, you mentioned something about them saying everything's okay because Rakdos Vampires is a new deck and it won the tournament. And like my counterpoint to the Is It Phoenix thing is that it basically just that. In my experience playing that deck, at least on Arena, it has a pretty good Phoenix matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And like that might be enough to knock Phoenix down a peg. And I don't inherently think that Rakdos deck is a problem.
No.
Like, I've certainly lost with it.
Yes. Like, I think it's fine. I think that one of the problems, and again, this was a pre-show thought, is that you have no reason to play Pioneer.
Yeah.
So there's going to be like less innovation that maybe people see. Like, if something like becomes really good on Arena, right, in Explorer, maybe that's enough to kind of like bubble to the surface. But there aren't like, I don't think there are a lot of like high, like major importance, high level tournaments
Right.
coming up that are gonna like inspire people to like sit down and like really like figure out,
innovate
and like figure out how to like attack Rakdos or attack blue red.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like, I don't know if you're gonna get that innovation to kind of move the format forward. We might just be kind of stuck.
Maybe.
Which, you know, is kind of a product of like not having like events anymore. Right. But like, I think it's fine. Like, I've not seen hardly any. I've not played a ton, but I've not seen hardly any Phoenix on the ladder recently.
Oh, I played against a bunch of it.
Okay, I haven't played a bunch recently, but I was thinking today, like, oh, I haven't seen a bunch of Phoenix in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, it might just be that Black Red is a good like counter to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you also have the like, you know, it's now like becomes harder for them on some level to print good vampires, because like if they print like another good vampire, like that deck just gets like better, like
True.
Like, you know, a better Dusk Legion Zealot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1/2 that draws you a card. It's a 2/1 that draws you a card. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like then
the Vampire Inspector.
Yeah, exactly. I'll suck your blood.
Here's a token.
Here's a token. There we go. It enters, draws you a card, makes a blood. There we go.
1 mana.
1 mana. Explorer, no changes. It's just Pioneer.
Yep.
I think the only thing is like we say it's just Pioneer, but like Lotus Field is not a deck.
Correct.
Which, another thing, right? Like, I think we've talked about this as well. Like the way they treat Lotus Field on Arena.
Mm-hmm. They're tiptoeing
Like,
around it.
Yeah, leads me to believe that it might be on the chopping block as well.
Yeah.
And then we get to like the change that like really kind of matters.
Mm-hmm. And this is modern.
Mm-hmm.
Violent Outburst was banned. If you don't know what Violent Outburst is, it's basically a 3-mana spell that cascades. You really don't have to worry about the rest of it.
No, every so often that comes up.
Yeah.
So it was the backbone of the one of, if not the best deck in the format for maybe the last year.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the third or fourth best deck in the format.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in Rhinos. And then it's in Living End.
Yep. So basically you're looking to cast Violent Outburst and then cascade into the free suspend spells.
Yeah, so either Crashing Footfalls or Living End.
Yep.
And then, so some of the problematic play patterns is all of the other versions of this like 3-mana cascade are sorceries. This was the only instant.
Yep.
So that had the unintended consequence of letting Force and Negation protect your combo.
Yeah, also giving all your creatures pseudo haste.
Yeah. And then also Rhinos got better because of Leyline of the Guild Pact.
Yeah.
Right, it became like part Rhinos, part Domain.
Mm-hmm.
Where they got to play Scion of Draco. And when it resolved, if Leyline of the Guild Pact was out, your Scion was blue, so it had hexproof.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got all the different abilities for having all the different colors.
Vigilance, hexproof, lifelink, first strike, trample.
Yes.
For the low price of 2 mana.
Mm-hmm. So like Guild Pact land 4/4 unkillable.
Yep.
And then also it had like the joy of getting to play Leyline Binding, a card that was probably also a mistake.
Right.
So, like, Cascade and, as we found, Discover are fine cards when they spin the wheel. But in Constructed, they never spin the wheel.
Yeah, you build the deck to do a thing, not to spin the wheel.
Yeah. Remember like Shardless Bug in Legacy? Like, that just seems so cute. Now, sometimes you hit a Deathrite Shaman. No, stop.
Sometimes you hit an Ancestral Visions.
Yeah, it's like
that was
one of those
payoff.
is way better.
You get to draw 3 cards.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
This is like, oh, you win the game. So, like, Violent Outburst has been, like, a card that has, like, been, like, not okay on some level for a very long time. Like, Violent Outburst in Living End was a thing 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I bought Living End. I couldn't even tell you when. Forever. I think it was one of the first modern decks I bought into.
Yeah, and you played it at a modern GP.
I did. Unsuccessfully.
Unsuccessfully. But like Violent Outburst has like been around and Living In forever.
Yeah.
And they had to play what is that card? The one red black target creature can't block.
Demonic Dread.
Demonic Dread.
Yep.
That was the other Cascade card.
Yep.
Right? But when they got Shardless Agent,
you didn't have to play Demonic Dread anymore.
They had to play Demonic Dread, and it like shares, like it shared green, so you got to be teamer, so you got to bring in blue.
Yep.
And then, oh hey, get free counter spells. So, like that's really gonna like take like really shake up Modern, because like 2 of the top like 4 decks played that card. And like there are replacements. There's like Ardent Plea.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, but it's blue-white, yeah.
But it's a sorcery.
Yeah, like before Shardless was in Modern, like there were versions of Living In that played Ardent Plea, though.
Yeah, but a lot of them also still had Violent Outburst. It was like Violent
Yeah.
Outburst plus, but Violent Outburst is like the best of the
Well, no,
Cascade
the blue
spells.
white ones played. There was a different one. It was Ardent Plea and something else. I don't think it was Violent
Okay,
Outburst.
but you have so like you could like become like Bant because there's not like a huge draw to being red other than like Oliphant.
Yeah.
But like the Eagles are fine if you want to like swap Oliphant for Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like Living In could also be kind of stuck at sorcery speed.
Yeah.
Right, like that's fine. So like they're gonna get a little bit worse, but they'll probably still be around.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem, right, is like the the line between unplayable and playable and modern is so thin.
Yeah, it's a razor.
Right, like making these decks a little bit worse might make them unplayable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
In
mean
like a
that's the
competitive
problem.
setting.
Living End has had for years. It's either abysmal or the best deck in the format, and like literally nowhere in between.
Yeah, like it's never like the eighth best deck.
Right.
It's either like tier 2 or like the first or second best deck.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the thing it does is so powerful, and like it's kind of like Tron 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Where like, oh, did you like pack like 4 pieces or 5 pieces of Tron hate in your sideboard? No? Did all of you not pack that much? Okay, cool. Tron's winning this tournament.
Right.
And then like the next 3 weeks, when everyone brought all their Tron hate, it was not good anymore.
Yeah. Yep. Same deal with Living End.
Like, oh, did you bring a bunch of cheap graveyard interaction? Oh, Living End is awful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did you not? Sweet, Living End is great.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. In the LSV article, he was saying that like Yawgmoth might become like way more oppressive now, because
Okay.
like rhinos could race Yawgmoth.
Yeah.
Before it got set up and doing its thing,
Mm-hmm.
but without that like faster deck that had like interaction, like Yawgmoth might kind of take over.
Hmm.
Which,
That's
probably
kind of
not
cool though.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the worst deck to be best deck. And it's not super typical that like that sort of deck is the best deck in the format either.
Yeah. I mean, we've had creature combo decks for a bit. But that's like the big change. But it's kind of funny, right? Like they took Fury out, which made Rhinos worse.
Right.
And hurt Living End. But they were also still both too good.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see like if it's still too good, even if it is like relegated to like sorcery speed.
Yep. Time will tell. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, Legacy, no changes. I have kind of like lost track of Legacy.
I have no idea what's played in Legacy anymore.
I have not like watched like dedicated Legacy content in a while.
Other than the Mind Goblin.
Sticker Goblin?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for all you vintage heads out there, they have unrestricted Ponder.
For whatever that matters.
Yeah, apparently Ponder has been on the vintage restricted list since 2008.
It's a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, so those were the bans. Modern will be interesting to see kind of what like shakes out. And I was watching a PK video today where he was talking about the spoilers from Modern Horizons 3.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, Emrakul seems insane. I wonder if you're going to get Tron decks that play like Cookbook and are just like on turn 3 playing a 12/12 flying trample.
You must have been listening to the podcast.
Yeah. Card is bananas.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see because like we can make these changes and the Modern could look totally different in 2 months.
Yep. We'll never know. Well, I guess we will know, but can't know right now.
can't know right now. All right. So that's the BNR. Thank you, content gods.
That's right.
So then, time to celebrate some of the lower rarity boys.
Yeah.
Boys and girls.
The uncommon uncommons.
Ooh, I like it. The uncommon.
Yeah.
So, I kind of perhaps set an arbitrary line.
Okay.
Of War of the Spark forward.
Yeah, I kept mine War of the Spark forward as well.
Yeah. So, fire design forward. So modern design sensibilities to now. And I didn't put random good black 2-mana removal spell.
I also kept removal spells out of mine.
And the idea was what are the uncommons that have kind of been impactful in various formats?
Yeah, I mean, when I had started talking about this, I didn't even necessarily mean impactful, but I think impactful is a good way to judge these. What I had originally meant was more just interesting. It seems like the more interesting designs have been at uncommon, and the more powerful designs. Well, not even that, because a lot of these cards are pretty powerful. But it seems like the higher rarity cards are just power, and then at uncommon you get actual unique good designs.
Mm-hmm. I think that rares have kind of crept into the power level of old mythics.
Mm-hmm.
Uncommons have taken a lot of the power level and interesting design space that used to be reserved for old rares.
Yeah.
And then current mythics are, rate monsters.
Yeah.
And commander cards a lot of times.
Basically.
We have to make this card good enough that it is effective in a 4-player game.
Yep.
Oh, oops, I guess that makes it unbelievable in a 2-player game.
Yeah. So
and I didn't the reason I said impactful.
Yeah.
It's just I didn't want to talk about kind of every neat card that didn't get play.
Mm-hmm.
Because we could be here all day. So it was more just what are the cards that enabled archetypes or did interesting things.
Oh, for sure. So first up on the list is we have a card that I played a lot of, Mayhem Devil.
We can also expand to the unholy trinity of Mayhem Devil Cat Oven.
Yeah, I can't bring them all up on the screen at once.
That's fine.
But
we'll Mayhem Devil. That's fine.
Yep, they're all here. So most of these, actually, I think almost all of these are cards that we would have covered in their respective set review episode, and almost all of them, all of them saw a significant play somewhere. So I don't know that we necessarily have to read through them.
No.
But maybe just speak to why it's an interesting or impactful design.
Yeah.
So we got Mayhem Devil, Cat, and Oven. What's the story behind these?
So, Mayhem Devil, when it was printed, just looked like a reasonable uncommon for the limited environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that we pegged it for format defining.
No, and then 6 months later they print Cat Oven. So we got Mayhem Devil in War of the Spark.
Mm-hmm.
And then 6 months later they gave us Cat Oven.
Yep.
Which when you kind of first look at Cat and Oven, you think
this seems pretty innocuous.
Yeah, and they're here to make a limited archetype work or turbocharge it, but they're both uncommon, so you don't think oh, hey, this is gonna happen very often. But then when you put Mayhem Devil, Cat, and Oven all together,
that's a powerful engine.
You get a powerful engine, you're doing 2 damage a turn cycle.
Yeah.
You get to throw it around.
You're preventing attacks because you got a free blocker every turn.
That was the worst part about Cat.
Yeah.
But if it said can't block on it,
yeah,
then it would have been okay. But like the Oko Pro Tour, the only deck like my deck was set up to beat Oko, could not beat a Resolved Cat. Could not do it. I was playing like Scorching, was it Scorching Dragonfire? Scorching something that was like the lightning strike that also exiled a creature.
Yeah.
To kill cats. It was rough.
Yep, that happened to be the deck I played for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I like had tuned a deck and had a positive Oko matchup. But then like not a positive red-black matchup, and I played it twice and got knocked out of the tournament.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to think like 5 years later, Mayhem Devil still like red-black sack is still a deck that people play. Like at
Definitely.
the Pro Tour, people played it.
Yep.
And it's just like these 3 cards, and like some of the stuff around the edges have changed. But it's like this core has held together for 4 years, 5 years in Pioneer.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Yeah.
All at uncommon.
All at uncommon.
Supporting 2 different limited archetypes.
Yes,
2 different limited
2 different
environments.
Sets. So then we have another one given to us by our friend Wilds of Eldraine.
Wow, crazy.
Or, sorry, this is Throne of Eldraine.
Throne of Eldraine. Yeah, so Cat Oven was from Throne of Eldraine, and we have the adventure mechanic.
Yes.
This is another kind of package. We have Lucky Clover and Edgewall Innkeeper. Both supported the adventure mechanic for limited, but also proved to be a pretty potent combination when combined with Bone Crusher Giant and Brazen Borrower for constructed.
Yeah, like, and you know, what's it called? Fae of Wishes.
Yep, Fae of Wishes.
All right, so the Teamer Adventure deck. Again, like you look at Lucky Clover and you're just like, oh, okay. Not realizing like, oh no, this just doubles all of my spells. Like this is a like a 5 mana card in red.
Yeah, basically.
And you got it for 2 mana.
Yep.
And again, like it was just there. I don't think it was like, oh, we're gonna put a adventure deck into standard. Let alone is going to be the best deck in standard.
Right.
It's like, no, this is just gonna be cute to like make adventures better and limited. But
well,
it just
when
turned
they
out to be
first started expanding Arena, like to have other formats, this was the first deck I put together, and anything outside of standard was just Teamer Adventures.
Yeah, like it just has so much value attached to it and stuff.
Yeah.
Both like, so you have Lucky Clover that pays you for the spell side, and then Edgewall Innkeeper that pays you when you cast the creature.
Yep.
Right. It was just like perfect. So you had
value.
like 8 of this card that gave you value for like doing the adventure thing.
For something that already gave you value.
Like,
I mean, we've broken down the adventure mechanic a bunch of times, and it's just whatever the front side is also draws you a card. And then when you double that and then tack on draw another card, like every time you cast a spell, it's basically a 4-for-1 or 3-for-1.
Yeah. Like it's kind of telling that like adventures aren't like as played as they were with like how far power level has come.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of innocuous, like adventures have just kind of like slowly slid to the wayside. Even though like you can build a deck that is like infinite 2-for-1s.
Right.
Not good enough anymore. Just strange.
Yep.
But like I think it's close. Like we had whatever the Teamer like 4/4 was in the last set.
Yep. What was her
and
name?
A couple other cards, like it was close.
Yeah. I don't remember. I don't remember the
something.
Yeah, I don't remember the Giant's name, but yep. Didn't quite get there though. But again, now both of these are uncommons. Oh,
I was gonna say there's really no rhyme or reason to the list.
Yeah.
It was just like what came to my head.
All over the place.
So
the next one is kind of the card that kicked this whole thing off. It's the Signpost uncommon from MKM and Insidious Roots. This card is like a super unique design that is also powerful, and for some reason at uncommon and like reasonably costed.
Yeah, like you could, like, I feel like it didn't need all the lines of text it had.
Yeah.
Right? It could either have major tokens tap for any color of mana,
Mm-hmm.
and then made a 0/1 plant when a creature left your graveyard. Or it could have made the plant and then put a counter on the plant for or on each plant you control. But the fact that they stuck all three abilities together,
right,
is kind of wild. Now it hasn't like really like taken off, but there
it
have
was
been
a
like
deck for a minute.
yeah, but there have been multiple standard decks.
Yeah.
That use Insidious Roots in some way, shape, or form. It showed up in some modern decks for a bit, like, just kind of like, Aspiring Spike, Doomwake, like that kind of like genre of like modern deck.
Yeah.
And then I've played against like Jund Sacrifice that was Mayhem Devil, Cat Oven, and Roots.
Ooh, that's gross.
Because like now your deck is super reliant on Cat Oven.
Yeah.
But like once you get Cat Oven, like now you either need Insidious Roots to make an army of plants, or Mayhem Devil to just mow down everything.
Yeah.
And you like, have this way of like, you get paid off 8 different ways in your deck.
Right.
For getting Cat Oven assembled.
Oh, that's a whole aspect of Mayhem Devil that we didn't even talk about, was the machine gun aspect. A lot of times these cards, just rewinding real quick, a lot of times these cards will just hit a player, whereas Mayhem Devil can hit any target, so you can really mow down somebody's board with it, which makes it even more powerful.
So I feel like this was like one of the first that hit like creature or player.
Yeah.
And then I feel like the different like the similar versions of the card that have happened later, they've been like only player.
Yeah.
Or only triggers once each turn.
Yeah.
Like they were like, oh, we went too far with this. Not like bannable far, but too far.
Yep, pushed it just a little too much.
Just a little too much. Like I think Insidious Roots is a card that hasn't like been archetype defining, but it definitely has the ability to be that.
Well, it does something unique.
That nothing else does.
Yeah.
And like, think about, we're almost due. I don't know if they can do it like safely, but we're almost due for like Unearth or Persist to come back. Right. It's been a long time since we've had those mechanics.
Yep. And we are going back to
Lorwyn soon.
Yeah.
I think the end of next year. But like a card like Insidious Roots kind of goes bananas in a world with a bunch of persist creatures.
Yeah.
Like just for example, like persist creature with what was the card that gave stuff Riot?
Oh shoot.
Like 1 red green enchantment.
Yeah, it started with a U, I think.
Yeah. Oh gosh. But like that just goes infinite with like a sack outlet.
Yeah.
And all your creatures get haste, so you just win the game on the spot.
Yep.
So like there are ways for this card to, in Pioneer and in Modern with kind of the right stuff around it, to just like win you the game like right now on the spot.
Yeah. Rhythm of the Wild did not start with a U.
Did not start with a U.
Yeah.
But like, there are ways to make this card just like win you the game. And like there aren't the pieces right now in like, let's say Pioneer, where like I think this is like, it has modern power level, but like maybe setup costs that leaves it like in Pioneer.
Yeah.
right?
Well, I don't think it does
But
enough at face value to be modern playable.
mhm. But like at Pioneer, it's probably good.
Yeah.
And like there's gotta come a point where like there's just a deck where you like make infinite plants.
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, turn 4, make like 40 plants. Do you have a wrath? Your go.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do. Sack my cat. Make a food. Okay, fine. Rebuild next turn. Do it again.
Yeah. Deal with it every turn.
Yeah. Speaking of modern power level,
Card that is banned in modern.
yeah, up the beanstalk. This didn't even
Didn't even register when we were looking at the set.
didn't register when we're looking at the set, and like the blue green like 5 CMC or more archetype was stone unplayable.
Yeah.
In Wilds of Eldraine, just could not play it.
Literally served no purpose except to break modern.
Yeah, and like it sees play in Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that one of the things that we'll kind of like come to as we do this is like a lot of these cards either on their face or sneakily give card advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're just like these engine cards in and of themselves. And I think that like of these first like 5, the most expensive card costs 3 mana.
Yeah.
Right? They're cheap engines that are like easy to set up or like reward you for like playing the game of Magic.
I wonder if that's why I made the comment. Like, I wonder if that's why I think these uncommons are interesting now, is because they're all just engine cards now. And, like, that's the way that I tend to like to play Magic, kind of grindy, engine-y. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting observation.
Yeah, but like a lot of these are engines. They're all cheap.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's like going through this, like you can look at what are the things that like you should be looking at for like the next set release, right?
Yeah.
Like what is going to be the next up the beanstalk? What is going to be the next like Lucky Clover? It's like things that are cheap, things that like assemble an engine or like give you card advantage.
Yeah.
Relatively easily.
Yep. Whatever lets you plot the most.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I want to plot. Perhaps commit crimes.
Yep.
Speaking of crimes, perhaps the crimiest of crime cards. So, Drown in the Loch is interesting because though it takes work, it like does something that you weren't supposed to be able to do.
Right.
Right. So traditionally, counter spells are bad once your opponent has resolved their bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And creature removal is bad when like your opponent's bomb is not a creature.
Or when it pays you off when it ETBs.
Yes. Or yeah, this handles both sides of the equation. Right?
At a good rate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's the most, I don't want to say egregious, but the most compelling thing about this card is that both sides of this spell are on rate. You're not paying a premium for the flexibility.
Like, it's balanced around you're like having to put cards in your opponent's graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
But in older formats, fetch lands.
Yep.
That's 1. And like if your turn 1 is Thoughtseize You.
Right.
Now there's 1 card in their graveyard. Then they fetch. Then they play a fetch land.
Mm-hmm.
Now your Drown in the Loch is on for 2 CMC, which is like all you really want.
Right.
Like in Modern. Like, you know, of course, like you'd like to like tag a Murktide Regent.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, if they have 2 things in their graveyard, like that's all you really care about.
Yep.
So, and then in Pioneer we had Rogue,
right,
which was like kind of was and kind of is like a fringy deck.
Mm-hmm.
But like it was able to fill your opponent's graveyard to make Drawn on the Lock great.
Yep.
But like Drawn on the Lock sees play back to Legacy.
Yeah.
So, but like again, this is another card that did a unique thing that took a little work, but it was like I'm a counter spell and I'm a murder.
Yep.
All for 2 mana.
All for 2 mana. Next one up is Bloodtithe Harvester, a deck that we talked about briefly a little bit ago in Rakdos Vampires. Card saw a ton of play in Standard, still sees play in Pioneer, but was also like the signpost for the vampire archetype in Crimson Vow.
Yeah, like this is another card that we missed a little bit, like the fact that it is threat plus removal spell.
Yeah. Well, I don't think missed is fair because, well, first of all, we did talk about it. It was the signpost. And second of all, like, the card is good and sees play in a bunch of places. Sees play in, like, basically every Rakdos mid-range deck and the vampire deck and yada, yada, yada. And it's even, like, aggressively costed, so it sees play in aggressive decks also. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't see this card as, like, format defining or like a problem or anything. Like, I think the card is fine.
I think the card is fine, but like for as much, like when you read the card, right? Like we've said about a lot of these, it comes across as a little innocuous.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it gives you a blood, but in like you think, oh, like is this like neg2 going to matter?
Yeah.
Right. Like it's the fact that it is a like face up sorcery speed disfigure.
Yeah.
Right. That's good when it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then when face up sorcery speed disfigure on suspend or whatever is bad, it's a 3/2 beater.
Mm-hmm.
And then when 3/2 beater doesn't matter and disfigure doesn't matter, it also lets you like filter your draws.
Yeah, unless you found another one, in which case it's closer to a dismember than a disfigure.
Yeah. But like just the fact that like there are so many like different things that it does that there's never a point where like Bloodtithe Harvester is a dead or like a bad card.
Right.
Like you can't like there's not a like board where you like are like, man, Bloodtithe Harvester is just bad here.
Yeah.
Right? Like 3 mana for like a chump block and a rummage. It's fine.
Oh yeah.
On a lot of boards. And sometimes it's 2 mana for like deal 9 damage and then kill a creature.
Yep.
Which is amazing.
And still a rummage.
Yeah. So just the fact that it does so much. And this is something that also is like a fire design thing of like there's no way 10 years ago an uncommon would have this much text.
No, definitely not.
This is like a rare amount of text.
Yeah.
On an uncommon card.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about that era of Magic card, you're also going to you're not going to get a card that makes game objects.
Yes.
Like game objects themselves are fire design.
We have Expressive Iteration. 2 mana, draw 3. Or 2 mana, draw 2 is really good.
Yeah.
And I know it's not technically draw 2.
Well, I mean, it might as well be. Like, the amount of times I've seen people get 1 card versus 2 cards are significantly favored in the 2 card portion of that chart.
Yeah, I think the times that people get 1 card is like the like I am not sure how I'm supposed to play Expressive Iteration, so I'm going to play it on turn 2.
Right.
Like that is like, you know, like you are surprised if your opponent like puts a spell into the exile zone on turn 3. You're like, oh, you didn't hit a land?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's unfortunate for you.
Yeah. And it's also a little bit more than draw 2 because you get selection.
Mm-hmm.
You get to look at those top 3 and make sure you hit your 2.
Yeah, a lot of these were like trying to be balanced around like, oh, you don't get both. You get one of the cards like you have to is like an impulse draw.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, that's not really a downside.
Right.
It is, but like not really. And like,
not as much as it used to be.
Yeah, and like 2 mana for a ponder.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
When sometimes it's 2 mana for a divination.
Yeah.
Right? If it's 80% 2 mana divination and 20% 2 mana ponder, it works out that 2 mana. Yeah, you take those odds of like, oh man, this 2 mana divination is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Banned in Legacy?
Banned somewhere. It definitely caught. Yeah, I think it is Legacy.
Yeah.
It definitely caught a ban somewhere.
Mm-hmm. And then my pet card.
Oh, your boy.
My boy Risen Reef.
Yep.
Like this could have just been Coiling or Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
And like you put the land in your hand.
Yep.
And that would have been fine.
Yep.
But it puts the land on the battlefield. It's kind of crazy. And it could have just triggered on other elementals. But it also triggers on itself.
Makes it kind of crazy.
It could have just been this when it ETBs, do the thing.
Yep.
And left off the other elemental text, and it probably would have still seen play.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that it's like, you get paid when I come in. You get paid when your Omnath comes in.
Yep.
And oh, I'm going to hit a land to trigger your Omnath to gain you 4 life.
Yep.
Right? Or like, I'm going to hit a land on turn 3 so that you can cast your Omnath.
Yep.
On turn 4 and then get a land drop. Like, it just does so much. And like, it's funny that like, we've had like Omnath printed.
Mm-hmm.
Locus of Creation. But there's not been a bunch of like playable elementals.
True.
Since. And like Risen Reef kind of by itself makes elementals like a like semi-reasonable archetype.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we said about a lot of these other cards, this is another engine piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's a signpost uncommon that builds an engine.
That it's kind of you say it builds an engine. It is just the engine.
Yeah.
Right. Like you build the engine in deck building.
Mm-hmm.
You fill your deck with elementals.
Right.
And then you get the Risen Reef, and you're like, oh, I have now assembled my engine because I put 30 things that said elemental in my deck, and then I drew one of these. I did it. But it is like it saw modern play for a while in like the early Omnath / like pitch elemental decks when people realize like, oh, I can play Risen Reef, and then my Fury isn't card disadvantage.
Right. And also ramps you.
Yeah. Draws you a card. So I want them to print more elementals so like my pet archetype can be like more reasonable.
Yeah.
I would like it to be like a playable like mid-range deck. I also would like to could we please ban Hushbringer, whatever the new Hushbringer is, and Stern Proctor. Can we please ban those cards?
Yeah. And Elishnorn.
And Elishnorn. Yes, please. I'm not asking for a lot. And can like Roaming Throne please not be $35? Those are the things I want.
Small ask.
All right. Small ask.
Another one of the cards that kind of kicked off this discussion, No More Lies from MKM. This one's not an engine, but it's a super reasonable, like at rate card that kind of pulls double duty. Counters a spell on tempo, so much like Mana Leak, which at one point was modern playable. and also serves as kind of quasi graveyard hate, as the thing that you're countering leaves the game.
Yeah, so like, this, I didn't know if we should include this one since it kind of is like bumping up against the line of like, I'm just kind of a removal spell.
Well, so is Drown in the Lock though, but
Yeah, but like 3 mana, like if you think about like Censor, you can play around.
Mhm.
Quench / make disappear. Maybe you can play around like 2 mana.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't play around 3 mana.
No, it's just a
Right, like
spell.
you can't like be like, I'm not gonna cast my 2-drop until I have mana to pay for No More Lies.
Right.
Like they'll just do anything else and bury you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so you just kind of in the early game just have to kind of like shrug and
Eat
like
it.
run your spells into it.
Yeah.
And then be like, oh, it resolved? Neat.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But like it was, we talked about how blue white wasn't that good in the Pro Tour.
Mhm.
But like this is a big reason why anyone I think even really considered playing blue white.
Definitely.
Right, like cuz blue white before No More Lies and then blue white with No More Lies is like kind of a totally different deck.
Yeah.
Right? Cuz, it's such a huge upgrade on Censor, and especially boomers just love the thought of casting a mana leak,
Mm-hmm.
because again, for the youngins, that was like the thing to do in Modern.
Yeah, I still have
From
my
like
OG mana leaks.
from like 2012
Yeah.
to like 2018 was like just mana leaks and people.
Yep.
Either in blue white or in like Splinter Twin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh my god, we get mana leak in Pioneer. But like this shows you like you can push that card, and it is super annoying when your opponent has it. But like the deck didn't do well.
Right.
Like how how much does the power level of Magic cards change that you could almost put mana leak in Pioneer and it would be like, meh, it's okay.
It's okay. Just okay.
In the same vein, another War of the Spark special.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these are duplicates from the same sets. War of the Spark, Throne of Eldraine.
It was like at the beginning of Fire Design, they had no idea how big they were making the fire.
Yeah. Turns
they
out
just knew
real
they were
big.
making one real big. Dovin's Veto.
Dovin says no.
End of Counterspell War.
Yep.
Like a hard to cast negate with like upside.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, No More Lies, hard to cast mana leak with upside.
Yep.
Again, another card that's like legacy playable.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you just want to make sure it doesn't resolve, Dovin does that for you.
That's right. Especially in like the older formats where decks are a lot more spell heavy than creature heavy.
Mm-hmm. And like they can be tapped out but still have like interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that you can just be like, I'm going to cast this now and like kind of put an end to all this foolishness.
Yep.
Is kind of a big game.
Yep. And we have another War of the Spark special in Neo form.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the best rate for this kind of effect that's been printed.
Yeah, like I think the next best one is 3 mana.
Yeah.
And like the fact that it searches for the creature, puts it on the battlefield, and then puts a counter on it has also enabled things.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Lorehold Velomachus decks?
Yep.
Where you just cast time warps and stuff.
Yep.
It is not a unique effect, but like you said, it's the cheapest version of this effect.
Yeah. So a little bit more narrow in its scope because it only goes like it has to be +1. It's not like +1 or less or whatever. It has to be like +1 to sack creature, but seems to have not been an issue.
Yeah, it just so happens that all the Delve creatures
are
1 less than a bunch of powerful things.
Imagine that.
Like, this is 6 mana technically. in air quotes, and mana Atraxa is 7 mana.
Hey,
neat.
imagine that.
Griselbrand is 8 mana, and Alice Wardrider is 7. Neat.
Cool.
Yeah, so like it's like the reason that like the Neoform decks exist in Pioneer and Modern,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a little too fragile for Legacy.
Yeah.
But again, this like innocuous uncommon. Now they're fringe decks, but like if they printed I don't know, a green white version of this effect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then there was 8 of them. They might be one of the best decks in the format.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like right on the edge where it's just powerful enough, but the reason there's not like a more powerful or more consistent deck built around it is just that it's a one-off effect.
Yeah.
They've not ever done anything like this at this like mana cost.
Not at the same rate, that's for sure. And then we have another banger from Throne of Eldraine, All That Glitters. We've seen other cards with similar effects, but typically they're like just enchantments, whereas All That Glitters is enchantments and artifacts. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
And like this has been in the like Boggles decks in Modern,
the SRAM Low Cost decks in Pioneer.
Yeah. And like it got downshifted to Common because they don't care about Pauper. And was like the Affinity decks kind of rebuilt themselves to be like All That Glitters decks.
Yeah.
Because the card is bonkers.
Yep.
At like that power level.
Yep.
So there's just so much that it can that it does. And again, like it is a unique effect. That's another thing too, right? Like it seems like they print a lot of like these one-off unique effects.
Well, that's kind of what I said at the top of this, was it seems like a lot of these cards would have been like maybe not at the same rate, or maybe, maybe the knobs are turned differently, but they would have been rares. Like unique effects that you would have seen at rare, like prior to Fire Design, and they just kind of shifted everything around where now you're seeing all this, like these weird unique cards, like Neoform, like that's the only uncommon that does that. All of the other cards that do that thing are rare. So I don't know, it's a weird thing to see how the game has changed.
Yes.
All right. So that was 15 cards. We did a little bit about the BNR at the top of this. I believe the list we have here is approximately 45 cards. Do we want to call that an episode and pick up?
Yeah, I think that's good. Like we can call it here, and then we can like work through more of it, and I'm sure something will happen in the Magic world between now and
sure,
next week. There'll be 6 new sets announced, and
probably
like a new format or something.
Spoiling
so we'll
4
have
sets at the same time, and they're not going to put any set symbols on them, so we've got to guess which cards are from which set, and
they're
then
just going to have
hopefully
set
not
numbers.
Get disqualified from events for having illegal cards in your deck.
Yeah, has this happened recently? I'm sure it has.
No, I have no idea. Did that happen? I was making it up. I thought I was making it up.
It sounds like it could. Like I didn't know this wasn't like I just bought these packs. These packs were in print.
Yeah.
So with all that, I think we got a show. So again, if you want to reach out to us, perhaps add some uncommons to our list.
Yeah.
If you're a patron, you can see the list.
You can.
So you know what's coming next. But if you have some cards you want to add to the list, or things that we should talk about, let us know. Facebook, Discord, X, email, whatever you're feeling.
Yeah, hit us up. Let us know what cards you want to hear about. Let us know what you think about this little walk down the uncommon alley. There is like a goal to this as well. I want to talk about some other stuff like pertaining to these powerful uncommons at the end of all this. So we have that to look forward to. If you want to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do it. First is with our TCG Player affiliate link. CasualTryHard.com/TCG. Surf on over there, do your shopping, and support the show at the same time. We would greatly appreciate it. If you want to support us more directly, Patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG is where you can do that. Get access to our show notes, so you get to peruse this entire list. You also get access to our pre-show, and you get the benefit of knowing that you're supporting the show that you love. And we would appreciate that.
The best show.
The best show. Patreon.com/CasualTryHardMTG and chip a couple bucks in.
Yeah. And with that, we'll catch you on the internet.
We'll catch you on the internet.